But he's pretty quiet. I mean, I think what he does is he just pretty much lets you feel comfortable enough in yourself to just go.
They shared a screen and stole hearts, but behind those legendary laughs, something deeper was unfolding. Julie Hagerty, now 70, has finally broken her silence about her unforgettable time working with comedy legend Leslie Nielsen. For decades, fans have speculated about their off-screen connection, the behind-the-scenes chaos of Airplane, and the emotional truth behind their chemistry. Was it pure comedy? Or something more? What really happened on that set? And why did Julie keep quiet for so long? Now, in a rare and emotional reflection, Julie reveals everything, from laughter to loss. Airplane wasn't supposed to work. In 1980, nobody, not even the studio executives, believed Airplane would amount to anything. It was treated like a bizarre experiment, a spoof on a forgotten 1957 disaster movie called 0 Hour, using nearly the same script word for word. It had no major stars, no big budget, and no reason on paper to succeed. Studios were focused on prestige dramas or rising blockbuster franchises. Nobody was betting on a strange satirical film led by unknowns and serious actors asked to play comedy with straight faces. Even the casting process reflected the lack of faith. Instead of established comedic stars, the directors, Jim Abrahams and the Zucker brothers, wanted serious dramatic actors with zero background in comedy. The idea was risky: put veteran performers in ridiculous situations and make them deliver absurd lines with complete sincerity. They didn't want actors trying to be funny. They wanted them to be serious and let the material do the rest. That concept was completely untested. No other comedy had ever been constructed quite like that. Most films of the era relied on established comedians with proven timing. Here, they were flipping the rule book. And in the middle of it all was Julie Hagerty, a stage-trained actress with no major screen experience and a voice so soft-spoken it barely registered during her first audition. The studio didn't know what to do with her. She wasn't glamorous in the traditional sense, and her delivery didn't scream comedic heroine. In fact, early test audiences couldn't decide if she was acting or just being. But to the directors, she was perfect. Her natural awkwardness and sincere vulnerability made every absurd line even funnier. She wasn't winking at the audience. She was just completely, earnestly in the moment. And that's when everything started to click. Once the filming began, it became apparent that the strangeness of the atypical casting choices was giving way to a totally unanticipated creation. The scenes between Julie and Robert Hayes, who played the troubled pilot Ted Stryker, provided an emotional anchor for the film. But it was really the chemistry between her and Leslie Nielsen, cast as the ever-deadpan doctor, that became truly legendary. Before Airplane, Nielsen was well known for dramatic roles in television. His face conjured images of courtroom dramas, military tales, and suspense. Playing comedy? It didn't even cross his mind. But that's exactly what the directors wanted. A serious actor thrown into absurdity. They told him to play it straight, never act funny. And he delivered every line with surgical precision. Lines like, "I am serious, and don't call me Shirley," received a tone as though he were addressing a war tribunal. And that's what made them unforgettable. But behind it was so much more electric. On set, Leslie was bringing all the whoopee cushions to make the set bright at all times. He would spend the entire day making people laugh in between takes. And Julie, the new girl, was amused and overwhelmed by it all. She has never worked on a location set, not even with guys twice her age making all their stunts look very serious. But she adapted quickly, and Leslie would be one of the first, surprisingly enough, to lend her a quiet encouragement. Airplane had the look of a big gamble, though. There was no big studio push. There wasn't even a marketing budget to justify calling anything in the production a blockbuster. Then it was dropped quietly into theaters in the summer of 1980. Hardly anything expected out of it, and little to no press coverage. Then one day, all of a sudden, audiences started turning out. Then they kept turning out. Word of mouth spread fast, and people were laughing in ways they had not laughed in years. In a summer dominated by action movies, Airplane had pure, unadulterated chaos infused with Julie Hagerty in the middle. But behind Julie's overnight success was a story the cameras didn't catch. Her audition had shocked the studio, but the truth about how she landed the role and what she risked to keep it was even more surprising. Julie's audition shocked the studio. Julie Hagerty was never supposed to be a Hollywood star, not by traditional standards. When she walked into the Airplane audition room, she didn't command attention. She didn't flash a practiced smile or wear designer clothes. She was quiet, modest, almost hesitant. To casting executives used to larger-than-life personalities, she barely made an impression. But to the Zucker brothers and Jim Abrahams, she was exactly what they were searching for. Someone who didn't try to be funny, but was funny by simply being herself. Julie had come from the world of off-Broadway theater, where subtlety mattered and authenticity reigned. Her training came not from sitcom timing or sketch comedy, but from years of playing serious roles on stage. When she was handed the absurd script pages for Airplane, including lines about having a drinking problem while literally spilling water down her front, she didn't try to overplay it. She read them flat, with soft innocence and emotional sincerity. She treated the ridiculous as real. The producers were stunned. One executive reportedly asked afterward, "Is she trying to be that awkward?" The answer, of course, was no. That was simply Julie's natural rhythm. Her voice, breathy, gentle, and almost apologetic, turned ordinary lines into comedic gold. She didn't land jokes like a punchline. She floated through them, and that was her magic. What the studio saw as uncertainty, the directors recognized as genius. Still, there was pushback. According to interviews in later years, Paramount executives weren't entirely sold on Julie. She wasn't well known. She didn't look like the typical romantic lead. Some wanted a more established actress, with name recognition or more traditional beauty. But Jim Abrahams and the Zucker brothers refused to compromise. Without her, they said, this won't work. So Julie got the part and stepped into one of the most unpredictable film sets in comedy history. But behind the scenes, she was terrified. She later confessed to having no idea what she was doing. Surrounded by veteran actors, several decades her senior, she felt like an odd one out. Robert Stack, Lloyd Bridges, and of course Leslie Nielsen were icons in their own right. She was worried about messing up scenes or missing cues. But then something unexpected happened. They embraced her, especially Leslie. Some actors wouldn't stray from their lines. Julie was in the same space, but oppositely approaching things. The directors never doubted her instincts, nor did Leslie Nielsen. In the first couple of scenes with them, Leslie always observed Julie's reactions with a very modest interest. He started to adjust his timing to her rhythm. All this is subtle, except in an imperceptible way to most. But Julie caught it and never forgot it. One night, after filming, she heard directors discussing, "She is better than we thought," said one. "She's holding all the tone." That would be the first time Julie believed she was meant to be there. But the real turning point came with what people began to know as the autopilot scene. Julie had all the most ridiculous actions and dialogues in the movie. She revived a blow-up doll, sweet-talked an inanimate figure, and behaved as though it were all perfectly normal. She was sure she would be cut for making it too weird. Instead, it became one of the most quoted scenes in the history of comedy. Julie wasn't there for nothing. She gave a grounded, understated performance in a thoroughly chaotic film. Her innocence added depth to the satire. Yet unseen by the audience was the emotional weight it pressed down on her. Pressure, expectations, and the silent doubt that she could measure up. And just when she began to find her footing, Leslie Nielsen stepped in, not as a co-star, but as something far more personal. Their on-set bond would grow into something that changed the way she saw comedy and herself forever. Leslie wasn't acting. That was him. To the world, Leslie Nielsen's performance in Airplane was a career reinvention. To Julie Hagerty, it was simply Leslie. The deadpan delivery, the perfectly straight face, the absurd one-liners, none of it was an act. Off camera, he was just as quick-witted, mischievous, and bizarrely charming. Before Airplane, Leslie Nielsen had built a long resume as a dramatic actor. He was known for serious television and film roles, military men, lawyers, doctors. He had the voice, the posture, the presence. That was exactly why the Zucker brothers cast him. They didn't want comedians to make the jokes. They wanted dramatic actors to let the jokes land by accident. Leslie was ideal, but no one anticipated just how funny he would be when he let go. Julie remembers the first table read vividly. The lines were ridiculous. She could barely get through her dialogue without giggling. But Leslie, he never cracked. He read each line like he was reading a medical report, completely straight. That contrast was comedy gold. The more serious he got, the harder people laughed. And yet, when the cameras stopped, he was a walking prank, literally. Leslie was infamous for carrying a whoopee cushion in his suit pocket. Every day, every set. He'd sneak it into interviews, formal events, even serious conversations with producers. Julie said that in between takes, he'd fake medical advice, recite Shakespeare in a robot voice, or pretend to faint mid-scene. He thrived on disrupting formality. And yet, despite all the silliness, he had an instinctive respect for timing, silence, and chemistry. Julie once shared that during a night shoot, Leslie sat with her for hours between setups. She was exhausted. She wasn't sure if she was delivering the way the directors wanted. He didn't give her a pep talk or offer vague reassurance. He simply leaned over and said, "You know what makes this work? You believe it. That's the trick. Don't stop." It was a small thing, but it was worth everything to Julie. From then on, she stopped worrying about acting funny. She just let the absurdity happen and trusted that Leslie would be there to anchor the scene in his twisted version of normalcy. The ironic part is that Leslie never saw himself as a comedian. He admitted in interviews that growing up, he was not the funny one in the family, but the serious kid, the quiet observer. He found no fun in comedy until later in life. By that time, he had already found out something very rare. By not trying, he could make people laugh. Julie happened to be living out that transformation. On the set, she watched as Leslie moved closer into the absurd. Not overacting, just embracing the chaos. He once told her, "The trick is to play it like it's Shakespeare. The words are ridiculous, but the stakes are life or death." That set the whole different ball game in motion. Julie later realized that Leslie had taught her to trust her instincts, and more importantly, to find joy in the unpredictability that comedy brings with it. He taught Julie balance control with playfulness, precision with spontaneity. While the audience only saw their on-screen interactions together, what transpired in between takes, those private moments filled with laughter, silence, and encouragement, would leave an even bigger mark. Leslie was not only funny but also generous. For Julie, who was new to Hollywood and not quite sure of her place, that generosity became a kind of lifeline. But their connection wasn't just professional. It turned into something even the directors didn't anticipate, because the chemistry audiences saw wasn't acting. It was real, and one late-night scene would reveal just how deep that connection had grown, the chemistry no one could fake. By the time Airplane was halfway through filming, everyone on set could feel it. Julie Hagerty and Leslie Nielsen had something special. It wasn't just comedic timing or script precision. It was unspoken, organic. There was an ease between them that even the directors couldn't explain. They weren't the film's romantic leads. Julie's character, Elaine, was paired with Robert Hayes' Ted Stryker. But the scenes between Elaine and Dr. Rumack, played by Leslie, had a rhythm that caught everyone off guard. It was like two radically different instruments somehow playing the same melody. Julie once said in an interview, "I didn't even realize how strong the connection was until I saw the dailies. Something in our energy made people laugh harder, but it never felt forced." In one now iconic scene, Leslie delivers a line about needing to get to a hospital, followed by Julie's sweetly bewildered, "What is it?" and Leslie's perfect, "It's a big building with patients, but that's not important right now." The joke worked on the page, but it soared on screen. The way Julie blinked, slightly confused but not overplaying it, and Leslie's bone-dry delivery, that was lightning in a bottle. But their real bond developed off-camera. Julie was going through a painful breakup at the time, something she didn't talk about much publicly. She had ended a long-term relationship just before filming began. The emotional weight of that lingered behind the scenes. She was showing up to work every day, smiling and performing, but inside, she was carrying sadness. Leslie noticed. One evening, on the set night shoot, the cast was delayed for a long time due to lighting changes and technical problems, as always. Most had gone to their trailers. Some were sleeping in folding chairs. Julie was sitting on an empty stage staircase, staring blankly into space. Then, Leslie approached her, not as a joke or punchline, but with an apple and a quiet, simple question. "Want to run lines?" Later on, Julie would say she couldn't recall what scene they worked on. What she remembered was feeling very calm with him. They talked about movies and theater, loss, and the strange feeling of laughter when your inside is all broken. He didn't give her advice. He didn't pry for details. He listened. And that was the first moment, Julie said, when she felt safe on that set. From there on, their chemistry could only grow. They started improvising little things not in the script sidelong glances, beats of silence, even soft exchanges that editors chose to leave in simply because they felt real. It became so obvious that the crew had given them the nickname the Quiet Storm, that unexpected combo that stole scenes without ever seeming to try. People began to wonder if chemistry was involved and if it was of a personal nature. Julie would smile in a very polite manner and brush it off. To tell the truth, she had never exceeded the line with Leslie, but she owned up later. Had things been different in life, maybe? What bound them was respect, timing, and something unexplainable. Not love, Creative trust, the rarest kind. And it showed. In every scene, every pause, and every impossible punchline delivered with stone-faced precision. You could see two people trust each other absolutely. But as Julie's career gained momentum, something unexpected happened. While Leslie surged into a new wave of fame with The Naked Gun, Julie quietly stepped away. And the reason she left Hollywood just as her star began to rise? That story is even more surprising and far more personal. Why she really disappeared after Airplane. Airplane wasn't just a surprise hit. It was a cultural lightning strike. The film grossed over $150 million worldwide on a modest budget and instantly catapulted its cast into Hollywood's spotlight. For Leslie Nielsen, it launched a second career as a comedy icon. For Julie Hagerty, it should have done the same. But almost as quickly as she arrived, she disappeared. In the years that followed, Julie turned down a string of high-profile offers, major studio comedies, dramatic roles, even television deals. At a time when most actors would have fought for momentum, she stepped away. Fans noticed. So did the industry. Rumors swirled. Was she too difficult? Was she typecast? Did Hollywood not know what to do with her? The answer was none of those things. In truth, Julie was exhausted and deeply conflicted. She had never wanted fame. She loved acting, yes, but not the attention that came with it. After Airplane exploded, her life changed overnight. She couldn't walk down the street without being recognized. Reporters followed her. Strangers made inappropriate jokes about scenes from the film. Julie, soft-spoken and introverted, wasn't ready for the machine of celebrity. She had entered acting through theater, a world of process, character, and story. Film, especially blockbuster comedy, was a different animal. Suddenly, producers were sending her scripts that didn't respect her intelligence or nuance. They wanted me to play the same part over and over, Julie said years later. But I wasn't interested in becoming a joke version of myself. She also felt a growing tension with how Hollywood treated women in comedy. While her male co-stars were celebrated for their deadpan delivery and irreverent charm, Julie was often reduced to the flighty girl or the awkward love interest. The roles she was offered were either exaggerated stereotypes or empty placeholders. She turned them down, again and again, and every time she said no, Hollywood quietly closed another door. She had reached out to Leslie Nielsen, now enjoying the success of the Naked Gun franchise. "We would love her to be in my next project." To be sure, fans would have appreciated a reunion, but Julie said no. Not because it was the last time she did not want to work again with Leslie, but she was not sure anymore who she was in the industry. Although she did not seem to know it at the time, Julie would later say that she felt as though she were being rewritten by Hollywood. Having seen her in that particular role, quirky, fragile, funny, Hollywood tried to put her in that box forever. Even as much success as he had, one could see he had gone into that typecasting. Julie could not. She had been moving back to New York. She was focusing more on her stage work, such as small projects and independent films that would allow her much freedom. Sometimes she would appear in a quirky comedy or in a surprise supporting role, always brilliant, always subtle, but never chasing the limelight. And, as fans wondered why she faded into the background, Julie quietly went about building a life of her own. However, she could not help but miss Leslie. The Naked Gun came out and drew him screaming back into the public eye, and she could only cheer for him from the sidelines while he did it. Yet she felt a twinge of something else, perhaps longing that they never again shared the screen, or that she chose not to speak rather than have that moment in the sun with him. Julie once said, "He was the only one who never tried to change me." That's why she didn't attend the memorial in 2010 when news broke that Leslie Nielsen had died. Not because she cared any less, but because it was too much to bear. And the goodbye she gave him was never meant for cameras. It was private, personal, and full of words she'd waited decades to say. The goodbye that shattered her. In November 2010, the world lost one of its most beloved comedic actors. Leslie Nielsen passed away at the age of 84 from pneumonia, leaving behind decades of unforgettable performances and a legacy few could match. Tributes poured in from fans, fellow actors, and comedians around the world. Red carpet retrospectives, highlight reels, and emotional interviews dominated the news. But one voice was missing. Julie Hagerty never spoke publicly in the days following Leslie's death. She didn't release a statement. She didn't appear at the memorial. She wasn't interviewed or quoted in any of the many entertainment specials honoring him. For many fans, her silence was surprising, confusing even. They had starred in Airplane, together, shared screen time in one of the most iconic comedies of all time, and had undeniable on-screen chemistry. What few people knew was that Julie grieved in private, far away from cameras and headlines. According to close friends, she was devastated, truly shattered, in a way that surprised even those closest to her. In the days after his passing, she wrote a letter, not a statement, not a press release. A handwritten letter addressed to Leslie's wife, Barbarie. In it, Julie reportedly shared stories from their time on set that she'd never told publicly. She recalled his quiet encouragement, the way he carried the weight of a scene without needing the spotlight, and how he made her feel seen during a time when she felt invisible in the industry. "I never got to thank him," she wrote, according to someone close to the family. "Not properly, not for the jokes or the kindness, but for letting me feel like I belonged when I didn't." She didn't attend the public memorial because, in her own words, it would have felt like a performance, and he hated performances that weren't honest. Julie rather spent the day in New York City resurrecting Airplane for the first time in probably just over 10 years. She said it probably was the hardest thing she had ever had to view in her life. It was a tearjerker each time a chuckle erupted within her. Each scene with Leslie was a scene that could only remind her not just of filming, but also of the man. In a rare interview that took place in 2021, Julie allowed herself at last to speak about his death. While in a hushed theater for a retrospective panel, a moderator posed a question to Julie. "What was Leslie Nielsen to you?" She took a breath, and the words came quietly. "He was the kindest man I ever worked with, and probably the one who understood me best." She said Leslie never made her feel small, even when other actors outweighed or neglected her in their earlier days. There would be an air of equality when it came to him. In this world obsessed with loud personalities and constant validation, he gave her space to breathe, exist, and, most importantly for her, be funny in her own quiet way. The audience stood up for her that night, not for a performance, but for her honesty. For ages, fans were asking why there was no reunion on screen between Julie Hagerty and Leslie Nielsen. The truth is that they didn't need any of that. What they had in Airplane was not chemistry, but lightning in a bottle, with two very different forces colliding to create something unforgettable. And for Julie, it was never about recreating that magic. It was about honoring it. But even after all those years, there was still one thing she hadn't said, one truth she had carried for decades. And in 2024, at last, she said it. And when she did, it left everyone gasping. What Julie finally said. In early 2024, over 4 decades after Airplane first hit theaters, Julie Hagerty stepped onto the stage of a packed auditorium at a special anniversary screening of the film in Los Angeles. She hadn't made many public appearances in years. She wasn't active on social media. And though she had continued to work in film and TV, she had carefully stayed away from interviews that dug too deep. But something about this moment felt different. The panel was meant to be lighthearted, a celebration of the movie's legacy. But when Julie was asked about Leslie Nielsen, the room grew quiet. The moderator had barely finished the question when Julie took the microphone, her voice just as gentle and deliberate as it had always been. She smiled, but there was hesitation. And then she began to speak. "I've never really talked about this," she said, "because for a long time, I wasn't sure how." She went on to say that Leslie Nielsen wasn't just a co-star. He was, in her words, a lighthouse. In an industry that constantly tried to reshape her, Leslie had reminded her that being different was not only okay, it was valuable. She revealed something she had never said publicly before, that in those early years, she nearly quit acting altogether. "I didn't feel like I belonged in Hollywood," she admitted. "I felt like a mistake that slipped through the cracks. I didn't understand the game." But Leslie, he never played it. He just showed up, told the truth, and let the absurdity speak for itself. That gave me courage. But then she paused. Her eyes welled up, and the crowd leaned in. What came next stunned everyone. "The truth is, I loved him," she said quietly. "Not romantically, but I loved him in a way that's hard to describe. He made me feel seen in a business where I often felt invisible. And that kind of love doesn't go away, even after someone's gone." With hushed silence, the room became an antithesis. Gasps erupted, tears welled up, and faint audible sighs traveled across the hushed room. Who would have thought? A candid display of emotion from Julie, whose sob laughs and sweet, wistful smiles were usually the quiet co-conspirators of conversation. But today, at 70, she felt it necessary to hold nothing back. "You know, after Airplane, we weren't very close. We didn't talk much, but we didn't have to. Some things just are. They live in you." Julie added that she continues to keep a framed picture of her and Leslie on the set on one of the shelves in her house, where she sometimes has conversations with the picture, most assuredly while doubting herself or feeling just slightly out of step with the world. Her words that night were a tribute, yes, but they were also a confession of something she had carried for so long in her heart, a quiet kind of love, a profound respect, a friendship based on absence of long talks, daily check-ins, or anything else save trust. People ask me why I haven't done any more comedies since Airplane. I'm just going to say that I've never figured out how to get anyone else like that. Maybe I wasn't supposed to. Maybe that magic only happens once." As she ended, the audience rose to applaud, but Julie sat back in her chair with tears in her eyes, smiling through the wave of emotion. For once, the fans did not wait for a performance. They were waiting for release. And just like that, after 44 years of silence, the puzzle that was their relationship no longer remained a puzzle, even to itself. It was real. It was human. And it was unforgettable. What happens next is unclear. But sometimes there's grace in leaving a story exactly where it chose to stop. After all, not every love needs a sequel. Some are meant to echo. If Julie Hagerty's story moved you, Share this video with someone who remembers Airplane. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more untold stories behind classic films. And keep watching. Our next deep dive explores a compelling and emotional story that sheds light on the hidden truths behind a familiar face.